There are more than 600,000 missing person reports filed in the United States every year. Most of those people come home. Some are found weeks later. Others are never found at all. Eventually, their photographs are taken down. Search teams move on. Families stop expecting phone calls. Case numbers replace names. Time buries everything. But every so often, a case refuses to stay closed. This is one of those cases. On October 14, 2018, Ranger Daniel Hayes began what should have been another uneventful night shift inside Black Pine National Forest. According to maintenance logs, he inspected 2 trailheads, replaced a damaged warning sign near Miller Creek, and completed 3 routine radio check-ins before 10:30 p.m. Nothing unusual, nothing unexpected, nothing that suggested his name would later appear inside a restricted archive. Daniel had worked for the National Park Service for almost 10 years. Co-workers described him using the same words over and over again. Reliable, patient, methodical. He wasn't known for taking unnecessary risks. He wasn't interested in local legends. When tourists asked whether Black Pine Forest was haunted, Daniel always smiled before giving the same answer. The forest doesn't need ghosts. People get lost because they stop paying attention. It became something of a joke among the other rangers. Whenever someone mentioned strange lights or mysterious sounds, Daniel would shrug and blame old batteries, bad weather, or tired minds. He believed every mystery had a logical explanation. That belief would disappear before midnight. Black Pine National Forest isn't famous. You'll never find it listed among America's most beautiful parks. Travel magazines rarely mention it. Families don't drive across the country to visit. Most people who pass through don't even remember its name. On paper, it's simply another protected forest stretching across hundreds of square miles of steep hills, abandoned logging roads, rivers, and dense pine trees. But maps rarely tell the whole story. Inside Ranger Station 4, there was an old saying passed from one generation of rangers to the next. If Black Pine ever becomes completely silent, leave. No one remembered who said it first. No one admitted believing it. Still, every ranger knew the saying, and every experienced ranger had, at some point, stopped talking in the middle of a sentence after realizing the forest had become perfectly quiet. No birds, no insects, no wind, just silence. The kind of silence that makes you aware of your own heartbeat. Daniel laughed every time someone brought it up, until the night he heard it himself. At 10:51 p.m., County Dispatch transferred an emergency call to Ranger Station 4. The call had lasted only 22 seconds. Most of it was buried beneath heavy static. The operator couldn't identify the caller, couldn't confirm a location, couldn't even determine how many people were involved. Audio specialists later enhanced the recording. Only 7 words could be recovered. "We're off the trail. Please." "He won't stop then." Nothing. Normally, a call like that wouldn't justify a full search operation. The forest was enormous. Without coordinates, searching at night could put more people at risk than the original emergency. But there was one detail that changed everything. The emergency call had connected to a cell tower located inside Black Pine National Forest. Someone was out there, lost, alone, and running out of time. Daniel happened to be the closest ranger on duty. Dispatch contacted him immediately. "Ranger 4, we've got a possible lost hiker near Service Road 12. His response came less than 3 seconds later. "Copy. I'm about 10 minutes away. I'll check it out, His voice sounded exactly as it had during every previous transmission. Calm, professional, almost relaxed. No one listening to that recording would ever guess it was the last normal conversation they would have with him. Rain began falling just after 11 o'clock p.m. Not enough to flood the roads, just enough to erase footprints. Daniel parked his truck beside an abandoned maintenance gate and continued on foot. His flashlight camera automatically activated the moment he left the vehicle. Unfortunately, the memory card recovered from that camera contained only the first 8 minutes. The remaining footage has never been located. Those missing minutes remain one of the most significant gaps in the entire investigation. Investigators still don't know whether the recording was damaged, deleted, or removed by someone else. At 11:09 p.m., Daniel made another routine radio call. "Dispatch, I found tracks." Dispatch immediately asked what kind. There was a pause, not a long one, just long enough to suggest Daniel was looking at something he hadn't expected. "They're barefoot." Another pause. "They're fresh." Dispatch asked if he wanted another ranger sent to assist. Daniel chuckled. "No, probably just some college kid trying to prove something. Give me 15 minutes. If I don't report back, you can send somebody to laugh at me." Several people inside the station later remembered smiling when they heard that. It sounded exactly like Daniel, confident, comfortable, completely unaware that he was walking toward the last place anyone would ever see him. The footprints crossed the gravel road, entered the trees, and continued in a perfectly straight line. No hesitation, no signs of wandering. Whoever made them appeared to know exactly where they were going. Daniel followed. His flashlight illuminated wet leaves, broken branches, and patches of soft mud. The footprints remained clear despite the rain. Left, right, always the same distance apart, always facing forward. Then, without warning, they stopped. Not because they reached rock, not because they entered water, not because the rain washed them away. The final footprint ended in the middle of a patch of undisturbed soil. There was no next step, no return trail, no sign that anyone had jumped, or climbed, or changed direction. It was as if the person walking had simply ceased to exist. Daniel remained silent for 17 seconds. Then he pressed the transmit button. "Dispatch." His voice had changed. Only slightly, just enough for the dispatcher to ask if everything was all right. Daniel didn't answer the question. Instead, he asked one of his own. "Has Service Road 12 always been this far from the river?" The dispatcher looked at the map hanging beside the radio desk. Service Road 12 wasn't anywhere near a river. There never had been one. "Ranger 4, she replied. "The closest river is almost 2 miles east of your position." Silence. Then Daniel spoke again. "I can hear running water." The dispatcher glanced at the other ranger inside the station. He quietly shook his head. There shouldn't have been any running water nearby. Daniel switched off his flashlight for a moment. Not because the batteries were failing. Not because he wanted to save power. He later explained why in the final entry of his field notebook. The last page recovered from his truck contained only one sentence. "I wanted to know if the sound would stop when the light disappeared." Nobody knows what he meant, because the notebook ended there. The flashlight came back on. The footprints were gone. Daniel stopped walking. "Dispatch, I'm either looking in the wrong place, or something just changed." The dispatcher asked him to describe exactly what he was seeing. Daniel hesitated. "I'm standing where the tracks ended, but the trees, they don't look the same anymore. Investigators would later compare Daniel's GPS coordinates with satellite imagery. According to every available map, he had never left the western side of Service Road 12. Yet the vegetation described in his transmission belonged almost entirely to the Eastern Valley. Different species, different elevation, different soil. It was as though Daniel was describing another part of the forest, without ever traveling there. At 11:18 p.m., his breathing became noticeably heavier, not panicked, focused, like someone trying very hard to understand something impossible. Dispatch, I think I found the hiker. The dispatcher immediately requested a condition report. Is he injured? No. Can he walk? Daniel stopped speaking for nearly 12 seconds, long enough that the dispatcher thought the radio had failed. Finally, Daniel whispered, "He doesn't seem surprised to see me." Inside the station, someone began writing timestamps on a legal pad. Every transmission, every pause, every unusual statement. That notepad would later become Evidence C in the official investigation. One sentence was underlined 3 separate times. 2318 subject appears confused. No one knew at the time which subject the note referred to. Daniel, or the missing hiker. Daniel, can you ask him his name? Another pause. The microphone picked up faint wind, leaves moving. Then, a second voice, too distant to understand, too clear to dismiss as interference. For years, audio engineers attempted to isolate those few seconds. They enhanced frequencies, removed static, filtered background noise. Nothing produced intelligible words. Only one detail remained consistent. The second voice wasn't speaking to dispatch. It was speaking directly to Daniel. What did he say? The dispatcher asked. Daniel answered immediately. He asked, another pause, if they've stopped looking for me. Nobody inside Ranger Station spoke. The dispatcher looked toward the duty supervisor. He frowned. Looking for you? Daniel gave a short laugh. Yeah, that's what I thought, he said. Probably meant somebody else. The laugh sounded forced, smaller than before, as though he were trying to convince himself. The rain stopped. That detail seems unimportant until you read the weather report. According to records from the National Weather Service, rainfall continued across Black Pine for another 3 hours. Every search team reported steady rain. Every traffic camera outside the park showed wet roads. Every ranger who later entered the forest described heavy rainfall. Every ranger, except Daniel. At 11:23 p.m., he transmitted 5 words. The rain just stopped here. There is no known meteorological explanation for localized weather changes of that scale, especially not within an area measuring less than 100 yards. The official report ignored the statement entirely. The Black Archive did not. 5 minutes later, dispatch ordered Daniel to return to his vehicle, not because they believed he was in danger, because they believed he was becoming disoriented. He acknowledged the instruction, copied, "I'm heading back." The transmission sounded normal, confident, steady. The dispatcher marked the situation as under control. Had Daniel reached his truck, this case would probably have ended there. He never did. At 11:31 p.m., Daniel called again. This time, he sounded out of breath, not exhausted, confused. Dispatch, I've been walking for 6 minutes. I should have reached the road already. The dispatcher checked the GPS screen. His beacon hadn't moved more than 30 feet. That wasn't possible, even walking slowly. Daniel should have covered several hundred yards. Ranger 4, Your tracker shows you're still in the same location." "Oh," Daniel replied quietly. "I'm not." Another silence. Then the words that would later appear in every classified summary of the case. "I don't think the forest is staying where I left it." The radio remained silent for almost 40 seconds. No one interrupted him. No one knew what to say. Finally, the microphone picked up footsteps. Slow, measured. Not one person walking. Several. Crunching leaves. Breaking twigs. Circling. The dispatcher immediately asked, "Daniel, are other people with you?" His answer came almost as a whisper. "I can't see anyone, but something keeps walking whenever I stop." The dispatcher immediately requested backup. 2 additional rangers left Station 4 within 3 minutes. A deputy from the county sheriff's office joined them at the entrance to Black Pine National Forest. All 3 vehicles activated their emergency beacons. According to dashboard recordings, they entered Service Road 12 at exactly 11:38 p.m. Daniel was less than half a mile ahead, or at least, that's where his GPS said he was. Inside the station, nobody spoke unless it was necessary. Every transmission was recorded. Every second mattered. The dispatcher kept one hand on the microphone. The other rested on the map spread across the desk. She had worked nights for nearly 16 years. She had listened to injured climbers, missing children, forest fires, flood rescues. She had never heard silence like this. Daniel was still transmitting. His radio indicator remained active, yet for almost an entire minute, he said nothing, only breathing, slow, controlled, as if he were listening, waiting, trying not to interrupt something. Then, very quietly, he asked a question. "Dispatch, have you ever noticed how forests are never actually silent?" The dispatcher frowned. "Daniel, when you think everything has gone quiet, you still hear insects, wind, leaves, your own clothes." He stopped. "When all of those disappear, something is wrong." The recording captured it. Every investigator who later listened to the tape agreed on one thing. At exactly 11 hours 40 minutes and 13 seconds p.m., every background sound vanished. No rain, no wind, no insects, not even microphone interference, just Daniel's breathing. For 6 seconds, it is still considered one of the cleanest periods of silence ever recorded on a handheld Ranger radio. Audio engineers later confirmed the equipment itself was functioning perfectly. The silence was real. When Daniel spoke again, his voice had changed, not dramatically. There was no panic, no shouting, only disbelief. "It's happening." The dispatcher didn't understand. "Daniel, tell me what's happening." "I can see the road." "Good. Walk toward it." "I'm trying." Other pause. "It keeps," he inhaled slowly, "moving." Search vehicles continued along Service Road 12. Their headlights cut through heavy rain. Visibility had dropped below 100 feet. The lead ranger reduced speed. The sheriff's deputy later testified that they should have reached Daniel's GPS location within 2 minutes. Instead, they drove for nearly 12, without seeing him, without seeing his truck, without seeing any sign that another ranger had ever been there. Back at the station, Daniel suddenly whispered, "I found my footprints." The dispatcher looked relieved. "Good. Follow them back." "No." His voice became quieter. "They aren't mine." Nobody answered. "I think they're following me." For the first time that night, Daniel sounded afraid, not frightened of an animal, not frightened of another person. Afraid in the quiet way people become afraid after realizing something they believed impossible has just happened. The dispatcher asked him the obvious question. What do you mean they're following you? Daniel answered immediately. They weren't here before. I only left one set. There are two now. Investigators later spent weeks searching the area. They found no footprints belonging to Daniel. No unknown footprints. Nothing. Heavy rain had erased every trace before sunrise. Only the radio recording remained. Daniel, don't stop walking. I'm trying. Keep ending up. He swallowed. Back here. The dispatcher looked again at the GPS display. The blinking icon had begun drifting in tiny circles. Not hundreds of yards, only a few feet. Round, and round, and round, as though Daniel were unknowingly walking in a perfect loop. The deputy's vehicle finally reached Daniel's parked truck. Its headlights were still on. The driver's door stood open. Rainwater covered the empty seat. His flashlight was missing. His backpack remained inside. His jacket hung behind the passenger seat. His coffee was still warm. The engine was still running. The transmission was still in park. It looked as though Daniel had stepped away. Only seconds earlier. Dispatch. The deputy's voice broke across the radio. We've located Ranger 4's vehicle. The dispatcher answered immediately. Do you see Daniel? A pause. No. The deputy swept his flashlight across the trees. Daniel, only Rain answered. Inside Station 4. Everyone heard something. Not through the forest. Through Daniel's radio. Footsteps. Slow. Measured. Crunch. Pause. Crunch. Pause. Crunch. They didn't sound close. They sounded patient. The dispatcher pressed the transmit button. Daniel, if you can hear me, answer now. For nearly 10 seconds, nothing happened. Then Daniel replied, barely above a whisper, they stopped when you spoke. No one at the station understood what he meant. The dispatcher tried again. Who stopped? Daniel didn't answer immediately. Instead, he asked a question that would haunt everyone who heard it. How many people came looking for me? The dispatcher frowned. What do you mean? I mean, how many? She looked toward the supervisor. He mouthed, answer him. 3. 3 people are heading toward you. Silence. Then, no. They already got here. Nobody inside Ranger Station 4 moved. The dispatcher stared at the radio as if she had misheard him. Daniel, who got there? His answer came immediately. The search team. The duty supervisor leaned toward the microphone. Daniel, EM hasn't reached you yet. We're still at your truck. No, Daniel whispered. They're standing right here. For several seconds, the only sound on the transmission was rain. Then, another voice, not through the radio, not speaking into a microphone, just close enough for Daniel's radio to capture it. A man's voice, calm, almost conversational. Don't answer them. The station fell silent. Every ranger in the room looked toward the speaker. Nobody breathed. Daniel, the dispatcher almost shouted now. Who is with you? No response. Instead, Daniel spoke to someone else. I know you. A pause. I've seen you before. The unknown man laughed, very quietly. No, you've seen yourself. The recording erupted with static. For nearly 5 seconds, the signal became completely unreadable. When Daniel's voice returned, it sounded different, not distorted, not injured, just older, as though years had passed in the space of a few seconds. Dispatch, I'm beginning to understand. The dispatcher fought to keep her voice steady. "Daniel, stay where you are. We're coming." Other pause. "Then, you already did." The search team finally left the truck and entered the forest. Their body cameras were recovered after the investigation. The footage has never been released publicly. The official explanation cited evidentiary restrictions. 3 investigators assigned to review the recordings later submitted requests for psychological leave within the same month. No explanation was attached. According to GPS data, the search team walked directly toward Daniel's last known position. The distance measured just under 400 yards. It should have taken less than 6 minutes. Instead, they walked for 34. When they finally reached the GPS marker, they found nothing. No ranger, no footprints, no flashlight, nothing. Only a small clearing, perfectly still, perfectly silent. One of the deputies later described the silence during a private interview. "It wasn't quiet. It felt like something had removed sound." He refused to elaborate further. At 11:52 p.m., Daniel transmitted for the final time that night. His voice was calm, calmer than it had been all evening. "Dispatch, I'm looking at them." The dispatcher answered immediately. "Who?" "Us." No one understood. "They're standing around my truck. They're calling my name. They can't hear me." The dispatcher froze. The supervisor slowly turned toward the deputy's live body camera feed. The timestamp matched. Exactly. At that precise moment, their search team was standing around Daniel's truck, calling his name. "Daniel, where are you?" His answer became one of the most quoted lines in the internal investigation. "I'm where you'll be looking tomorrow." The transmission ended. No static, no interference. It simply stopped. Official investigation. The search operation continued for 12 days. More than 100 volunteers participated. Tracking dogs lost Daniel's scent approximately 6 miles from his truck. No biological evidence was recovered. No signs of violence were discovered. No explanation was ever established. On October 26, 2018, Ranger Daniel Hayes was officially classified as a missing person. His case remains open. 1 year later at 11:42 p.m., exactly 1 year after his disappearance, Ranger Station 4 received another transmission. It originated from Daniel Hayes' missing radio, the same radio never recovered during the original investigation. The recording lasted 38 seconds. Every audio expert who examined it reached the same conclusion. The voice belonged to Daniel Hayes. No evidence of editing, no evidence of imitation, no evidence of signal spoofing. The first words he spoke were, "I've located the missing hiker." The dispatcher answering that night had not been working during Daniel's disappearance. She didn't recognize the voice. She simply followed protocol. "Identify yourself." Daniel hesitated, then quietly asked, "Did they ever find me?" No further transmissions have ever been received from Ranger 4. The Black Archive obtained this case in February of 2019 after inconsistencies were discovered between the official investigation and the original radio logs. Several documents referenced throughout this reconstruction remain classified. 2 audio files mentioned in the evidence index are missing. 1 page from Daniel Hayes' field notebook has never been recovered. The final entry ends with the sentence written in unusually steady handwriting. It reads, "If anyone finds this notebook, do not follow the footprints. Wait until you hear the birds again. Case status unsolved closed, for now."